See how small it is? My feet touch the ground. Oh, touch the ground. It's good. If I never see things, I know about that to my knees. Oh, it's too big. That's what it is. Oops. Okay. I have another mission I have to accomplish, so I need your help. I don't know all the details of it yet. I'll find it a little while. Thank you. You just need, if you can change the physics, just back it up a little bit so there's more weight on this side. And that will. Can you do it? It works. We need to move this stem back. No. How many Hare Krishnas does it take to adjust the microphone? Whatever. You see, if you don't do that, it just keeps going like this. You need more weight on this side. Oh, I got an idea. Exactly. You got it. See if that works. There you go. Become a physics major. Hare Krishna. Huh? Yeah. Needed a counterweight, you know. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivanadari Jaya Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivanadari Jasodanandana Bhaja Janaranjana Jasodanandana Bhaja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Gopi Jana Vallabha Girvanadari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girvanadari Jasodanandana Bhaja Jana Ranjana Jasodanandana Bhaja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Gauranita. Jaya Kishore Kishore, Jaya Kishore Kishore, Jaya Kishore Kishore, Jaya Kishore Kishore. Balaram, Krishna Balaram, Jaya Krishna Balaram. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Srila Prabhupada. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Prabhajakacharya Asto Tarasata Sri Sriman His Divine Grace Abhay Charanadavinda Bhakti Vedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Iskcon BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Anantakoti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jantra Srimad Bhagavatam Ki. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to you, Srila Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Samaniti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharni Nirvishisha Shunyavadi Paschachadasataya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading from the 7th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Let's see if there's a marker. Yes. We're reading chapter 2, canto 7, chapter 2, text 39, I believe, today, isn't it? Yes. And the name of the chapter is Hiranyakashipu, King of the Demons. Ya ichayesha srajatidam avyayo ya eva rakshat ya valumpate chaya tasya bala kridanam ahur ishitush chara charang nigraha sangrahe prabhu ya ichayesha srijatidam avyayo ya eva rakshatya valampate yachaya tasya bala kridanam ahur ishitush chara charang nigraha sangrahe prabhu Vaishnavas Yadisha yesha sajitidam avyayo Ya eva rakshatya vilumpateya Tasya bala kridanam ahur ishitush Chara charam nigraha sangrahe prabhu Taisha chujitidim avyayo Ya eva rakshatya vilumpate chaya. Yasya bala kridanam ahur ishitush. Chara charam nigraha sangrahe prabhu. Ya icha yesha prajitidam avyayo. Ya eva rakshati avalumpate chaya. Tasya bala kridanam ahur ishitush. Sarachara nigraha sangrahe prabhu. Vaishnavis. Ichadesha prajatidam avyayo. Ya eva rakshatya valumpate chaya. Tasya bala kridanam ahur ishitush. Chara charam nigraha sangrahe prabhu. Ya icha yesha swajitidam avyayo. Sa eva rakshatya vilumpate chaya. Tasya bala kridanam ahur ishitush. Chara charam nigraha sangrahe prabhu. Ya who ichaya, by his will, without being forced by anyone. Isha, the supreme controller. Srijati, creates. Idam, this material world. Avyaya, remaining as he is, not having lost his own existence because of having created so many material manifestations. Ya, who? Eva, indeed. Rakshati, maintains. Avalumpate, annihilates. Cha, also. Ya, who? Tasya, of him. Abala, poor women. Kridanam, the playing. Ahu, they say. Ikshitu, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Chara charam, moving and not moving. Nigraha, in destruction. Sangrahe, or in protection. Prabhu, fully able. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. The boy addressed the women. O weak women, only by the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is never diminished, is the entire world created, maintained, and again annihilated. This is the verdict of the Vedic knowledge. This material creation, consisting of the moving and non-moving, is exactly like his plaything. Being the Supreme Lord, he is completely competent to destroy and protect. Purport. In this regard, the queens might argue, If our husband was protected by the Supreme Personality of Godhead when in the womb, why has he not been given protection now? To this question, the answer is, Ya itchayesha shajiti dam avyayo ya eva rakshatya valampate chaya. One cannot argue with the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord is always free, and therefore he can protect and can also annihilate. He is not our order carrier. Whatever he likes, he will do. Therefore, he is the Supreme Lord. The Lord does not create this material world at anyone's request, and therefore he can annihilate everything merely by his will. That is his supremacy. If one argues, why does he act in this way? The answer is that he can do so because he is the Supreme. No one can question his activities if one argues, what is the purpose of this sinful creation and annihilation? The answer is that to prove his omnipotence, he can do anything, and no one can question him. If he were answerable to us concerning why he does something and why he does not, his supremacy would be curtailed. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Samaniti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Picharne Nivishesha Shunivadi Paschachida Satarne Mukam Korati Vachalam Pangam Langayate Grim Yat Kripatham Ham Bande Shri Guru Dinatananam Paramananda Vardhanam Shri Chaitanya Mishwaram. So we're continuing this story within a story within a story within a story that we discussed yesterday. And everybody remembers, right, that Yamaraj, in the form of a little boy, is speaking to these, what he calls here, weak women. Why does he call them weak women? Yeah, they were mourning for what was not worthy of grief, and they couldn't hear anything. They were just wailing, and they had the dead body of their former husband on their lap, and they wouldn't let him be cremated. They weren't holding on, they wouldn't let go. So therefore they were weak women, because they were attached to that which is not worthy of grief, as is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. But it's not only weak women, sometimes it's weak men. Arjuna was also accused of being attached to what was not worthy of grief, which was a sign of his weakness of heart also. Krishna told him, what is this weakness of heart? How has it come upon you? It's not worthy of a person of your stature. So as long as we're subjected to this kind of attachment, we are weak. And in this particular passage here, we have the interesting paradox that we discussed somewhat yesterday, that Hiranyakashipu, who is not exactly a Vaishnava, at least not in this Leela, he's not a Vaishnava. In other places he's a Vaishnava, very exalted Vaishnava actually. But in this particular Leela, he's been covered over, forgetful of that Vaishnava position, and he's speaking in a very interesting way, as we discussed, considering that he did what he did just a few verses before. Now he's telling the story of Yamaraj speaking to these weak women. And again, to point out, because it's very important, that Prabhupada elevator, that Prabhupada keeps referring to the Icha, the desire of the Supreme, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his translation, but in the verse, Hiranyakashipu doesn't use that. He doesn't say Bhagavan Sri Krishna. He just talks about the Supreme Controller who can do anything he wants. Almost like fate, or almost like it's just destined to happen. There's a force out there which causes things to come and causes things to go, and it's out of your control, so just deal with it. But Prabhupada's translation brings us to that Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Lord. And he points out repeatedly that Krishna can do whatever he wants, and we have no ability to change that nor to question it. Reading this purport again just now was reminding me of a letter that I recently got from someone who wrote to Krishna.com. And he said that he was a devotee of Krishna until he read the Mahabharata. And until he read the Mahabharata, in some passages of the Srimad Bhagavatam, he was completely satisfied with accepting Krishna as God. He loved his childhood pastimes. He was always nice to everybody, dancing with even the dancing with the gopis. He didn't have any problem with that. He was stealing butter. He didn't have any problem with that. But he really had a problem with some of the killing that went on in the Mahabharata, and especially some that appeared to be fair, that Drona was killed, that Karna was killed, in what seemed to be unfair ways, and that Krishna was involved. He sanctioned it. He was part of it, and that kind of he questioned now his loyalty, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He actually said, "I wish I never had read those books, because they interfered with my faith in God." And I had to write him back, God can do whatever he wants. I mean, if God has to hold himself up to your scrutiny and ask you whether it's okay, then he's not God, you are. So what does that do for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that he has to come and check in with you? Is this okay if I do this? So he wrote me back and he said, "Don't get me wrong. I still accept God as God. I just have a hard time understanding what he does." I said, "Well, okay, you're not alone." Because even Grandfather Bhishma, who was a Mahajan, right, when he was talking to Yudhisthira after the battle of Kurukshetra was over, and Krishna brought Yudhisthira to Bhishma Dev to receive instruction. Actually, in the Mahabharata, that's the longest part of the Mahabharata, is the instruction of Bhishma Dev to Yudhisthira. And he gave him so many instructions about so many things, but he began the discussion with some preliminary statements that are in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And he said to him, "I don't know how, you're such great devotees, all of you, and you had Krishna as your friend, and still you suffered so terribly. It appears that you suffered so terribly in this war and before the war. So many attempts to kill you, your kingdom was taken away. Nahi yasya karichit rajan." No one can understand the activities of the Supreme Lord. Even though great philosophers inquire exhaustedly, still they're bewildered. They're still bewildered because they can't understand how Krishna manipulates the material energy to accomplish so many things at one time, and it becomes very confusing. So even Bhishma was confused, and you're certainly in good company, I told this person. Don't be so concerned about the confusion. Try to get to know Krishna, because the more you get to know Krishna, the more you'll be able to accept his wisdom. Maybe not understand his choice of activity, but at least understand his wisdom and have faith that whatever he does is the best thing. I was telling Uma yesterday in the car about a pastime that I had. Once there used to be a group of devotees called the Blind Uncle Band. And every Thanksgiving, they would do a performance, and they would spoof something. So sometimes they would spoof Alachua and the temple and the different devotees, and sometimes they would spoof other things. And they were musically inclined, very talented, and also wrote beautiful poetry. Kalakanta used to write very nice songs to the tune of various non-devotee music. And but it was all spiritual purport. And it taught lessons, and it was very palatable, right? A spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. So it was very palatable. So one year, they did something, and it was kind of a spoof on various religious fallacies. And in the Jewish tradition, they chose to talk about Rabbi Kushner. Probably you don't know the name Rabbi Kushner, but you might know the book he wrote. And it's called Why Bad Things Happen to Good People. So you might have heard that expression. Why do bad things happen to good people? So he wrote that book because he had a 13-year-old son that died of old age. He had a very rare disease where he aged very rapidly. And so at the age of 13, he had the body of a 65 or 70-year-old, and very shortly thereafter, he passed away of old age. So that challenged Rabbi Kushner's belief in God. And he couldn't understand, why did God do this to my son? Why do bad things happen to good people? What did my son do to deserve this? Because there's no sense of the law of karma or any continuation of a life that goes on beyond the apparent existence of the material body. And so he had to reconcile that, and in order to reconcile that, he came up with a philosophy which was very actively, which maybe is still very actively embraced in the Jewish tradition. Actually, the Jewish, some of the elders, they've declared that to be Jewish, you don't even have to believe in God. It's not required. You can be Jewish and not believe in God. That's fine. We love you anyway. You can be culturally Jewish and support Israel, but you don't have to believe in God. That's not a requirement. Of course, the Hasidim and the very religious people, they don't agree with that, but it's there in the Jewish declarations. So anyway, they decided to talk about Rabbi Kushner, but they couldn't find anybody to play Rabbi Kushner. So they decided to have me play Rabbi Kushner's wife. Having some experience with Brooklyn Jewishness, I was able to speak and sing with the proper accents and words in order to pull it off. So I sang a song, which I'll spare you. I'm not going to sing the song. But I don't even remember it all. And I couldn't sing it without the musical accompaniment because it was dancing and stuff. But anyway, the words, some of the words were, those were mistakes, my friend. The Lord did not intend to throw a brick into your smiling face. He has a lot to do. He really does love you. Those were mistakes, my friend. Those were mistakes. So that was the the chorus of the song. And this is the philosophy. The philosophy is that God's really busy. And he does love you, but every once in a while, he's busy on the computer and he misses something over there. And so something happens outside of his purview that he couldn't help it. It was a mistake. He was busy. He loves you, but he has a lot to do. You have to be tolerant, Mom has to do the dishes. She has to go to work. Sometimes she can't make it back in time. You have to make your own dinner. So kind of like that God is not really on top of everything. Sometimes something slips through the cracks. And this is the philosophy of why bad things happen to good people. Because sometimes God's, he dozes off at the wheel. And or he's saying in a text message, something happens. So this is the way that people are reconciling. They want to believe in God, but they have to make God conform to their idea of what is right and what is wrong and what should be done and what shouldn't be done. And so they bend the philosophy. They try to bend spirituality into their own conception. And here you have Prabhupada talking about this, that Krishna is the supreme. You can't question what he does. Sometimes he does things that you don't think are good, and sometimes he does things that you think are great. Like if you get $1 million, you think, wow, God is wonderful, thank you, God. But if you lose $1 million, then you think, God? There is no God. What is he doing? What's wrong? What did I ever do to deserve this? I've been good all my life. Who does he think he is? Immediately we have this, because we have this conception of what it looks like. If God loves you, the Judeo-Christian conception is, if God loves you, you'll be rich, you'll be famous, you'll be good looking. Janma Ishvarya Shruta Shribi, right? That's the sign that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is on your side. You've got money, you've got a Cadillac, or whatever, a Ferrari. You go to the church and everyone looks at you because you're dressed so nicely and everything's going perfect. Your son got a nice wife, he's got a good job, there's lots of money. Everything is materially just the way you want it to be. And that's a sign that God loves you. If you suffer, if you have disease, if you have anything that's wrong, then that's a sign that God doesn't love you. You have nothing to do with it. It's not because you did silly things in your past life and now you're paying for it. No, that doesn't have anything to do with it. And then even beyond that, we see that sometimes people that really God does love, and he's quite open in his loving relationship. We see Yudhisthira and the Pandavas. Yudhisthira and the Pandavas, when in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, when Narada Muni was trying to find out the persons who had received the most mercy, one of the first people that he was sent to was Yudhisthira and the Pandavas. You have received the most mercy from the Supreme Lord because Krishna was your friend. He came with you. He went places. He protected you in so many different circumstances. And ultimately, he even became the chariot driver of Arjuna, and beyond that, he actually broke his promise to save Arjuna's life, right? He broke his promise to save Arjuna's life. He came rushing at Bhishma Dev so how fortunate you are that you have received so much mercy from the Supreme Lord. But the devotee doesn't see that, and even some non-devotees look at the situation and see, well, yeah, okay, he was their friend, but why did he allow them to almost get burned? And why did he allow them to be exiled for 13 years and have to live in? It looked like that 13-year period, the bad guys, they were having a good time. They had the kingdom, they had money, they had wealth. No one was overthrowing them. There was no rebellion. They were doing great. Duryodhana's treasury was stocked full by Karna's fighting, and things were going all right, it appeared. And yet the Pandavas were in exile, were suffering. And why? Why? Even Bhishma asked, why? The Pandavas hadn't read the Mahabharata, so they didn't know what was going to happen at the end of the story. Right? We've all read the Mahabharata, seen it in video, and read the Ramayana, so we know that, what happens. But the Pandavas hadn't read the Mahabharata. They didn't know what the end of the story was. But they had full faith in Krishna. No matter what he did, they saw Krishna's hand in everything. So the ability to be able to see Krishna's hand in everything, to see the loving relationship or the loving way that God deals with us, is the earmark of a true devotee. Now, in this discussion here with this little boy talking to these women, we can't forget the narrator, that the narrator is Hiranyakashipu. And in this Leela, Hiranyakashipu is devoid of spiritual insight. So he's kind of making it sound almost like destiny does its thing, and you shouldn't be attached because the material body is destined to die. It's just a lump of chemicals, almost like this karma mangsa philosophy that Krishna talks about in Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. If you don't believe in the soul, still you shouldn't lament. Because what's to lament over this lump of stool and urine and, chemicals that are worth whatever? And they're going to die, so why carry on about it? And if you do believe in the soul, well, then the soul isn't there anymore. The soul isn't there. The soul is gone. I had an experience where I was with my mother when my mother passed away. And I was sitting in this hospice place, and she passed away, and I went and told the lady, I think my mother has left. So the lady came and took her pulse, and she said, yes, she's not here anymore. She died. So then this hospice worker came. It was a priest. And he came and he asked me if I wanted to be alone with my mother. He said to me, I hope you're okay, and whatever, consoled me, gave me a little booklet I was supposed to read to make me feel okay. And then he said, do you want to be alone with your mother? I said, my mother's not here anymore. This is her body. And he kind of was taken aback by that. And a few seconds later, he said, yeah, of course. Your mother's not here anymore. So everybody's talking, yes, your mother left, but in reality, they think that's my mother. That their consciousness, that's all they've known their whole life. They never knew the soul that was their relative or the soul that was their in the body of their wife or their husband. They never knew that person. All they knew was this body. So that body, for them, is the sum total of the living entity. And because of that misconception, they suffer or enjoy, depending on how it rubs against their body, how it satisfies their so-called desire for happiness. And when that desire for happiness is no longer satisfied, then this comes, this lamentation, this misery, this suffering, because this living entity that I thought was going to protect me, that I thought was going to take care of me, that I thought was going to give me everything, that was doing a pretty decent job up until now, and now he's laying here, and what am I supposed to do now? So Hiranyakashipu only gets that far. Don't lament anymore. Get on with life. Or jump into the fire, whatever you're going to do, but don't stay here and cry. Because there's a destiny, a supreme energy that is in action here, and your crying isn't going to do anything. So why waste your tears? Why waste your time? That's his angle. His angle has nothing to do with telling them you should get on with life and worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We'll see that happen later when Vidarbhi is lamenting, right? And again a young person comes and preaches to her in the story of Puranjana. Then he gives her a different angle of vision. You don't lament. Understand the Supreme. Understand the soul. Take your realization now and use it to propel you into spiritual life. So here, Prabhupada again is giving us this highest knowledge to help us to understand what's going on in our lives. And it's not easy, because even though we know it intellectually, when we experience trauma, when we experience uncomfortable situations, when we experience death, especially death of someone that's dear to us, it's very difficult to remember that living entity is not there anymore. And they're in a better place, hopefully. They've been practicing Krishna consciousness. They've moved on to a better place. So we may suffer some loss, but the loss is because of our being stuck here and not having the association anymore. Srila Prabhupada, when he was leaving, he gave us a prayer, because the devotees wanted to pray to Krishna to save Srila Prabhupada. Perfectly logical thing. But Prabhupada wouldn't let us pray that way. He wouldn't let us pray that way. What happens to your faith when you pray to God for a very specific outcome and it doesn't appear to happen? Then your faith becomes shaken. And Prabhupada didn't let us pray that way. He said, we could pray, my dear Lord Krishna, if it is your desire, then please cure Srila Prabhupada. That was the prayer he gave us. My dear Lord Krishna, if it is your desire, then please cure Srila Prabhupada. And there were hundreds and hundreds and thousands even of people praying that prayer. But Prabhupada left us. And he left us with a big task, which we didn't feel ready to carry out, but we had to carry it out. We had to go on. We had to get over, like these ladies, we had to get over to, cry for a while and remember forever, but you have to go on. You have to deal with the situation that you have to deal with. And you have to understand that Krishna doesn't do anything that isn't ultimately for your good. And so we have the devotees and the Bhagavatam, the mercy of our gurus, the mercy of the Supreme Lord. Their design is to change our vision, to allow us to see things through a different perspective. What happens, happens. It happens all over. Birth and death are going on everywhere. People are getting hurt, people are getting cancer, things are blowing up. Natural disasters are happening all over the place. in accelerated rate because we're misusing the earth planet so grossly. And so these things are going on, but a devotee's reaction to those things and a non-devotee's reaction to those things will be very different. And based on how we see them, based on how we understand them, we have the ability to go forward and have our faith become stronger, our determination to get out of this material world and go back to Godhead becomes stronger, or we become confused and we think, why do bad things happen to good people? Why did these things happen? What did I do to deserve this? So Prabhupada and the devotees, by their mercy, they give us the eyes to see, to change the vision. If we look at the Bhagavad Gita, we see that what happened in the Bhagavad Gita was simply a change of vision. Right? Nothing really changed. Krishna started out on the battlefield of Kurukshetra with Arjuna in a chariot waiting for the war to start. And when his discussion with Arjuna finished, 18 chapters later, again, the same thing was there. Krishna was on the chariot with Arjuna waiting for the war to start. So nothing physically changed. The arrows were still going to be shot. Bhishma and Drona and the other members of the Kaurava and Pandava dynasty were going to be killed. Arjuna had already seen it in the universal form, in the Kala Rupa. He had already seen the people, these people entering into the mouths of Krishna in the universal form, getting caught in his teeth, right? Being pierced by his teeth. So Arjuna already knew previews of the coming attractions. He had already seen them. He knew what was going to happen. But now, at the end, he understood what was Krishna's will. And so he was able to go on, right? Now I can follow your instruction. Now I will do as you say. Now I will carry out your order. Because now I understand from a different perspective. I understand that whatever you do, whatever you tell me to do, is the right thing to do. And so because you said, do it, fight, I will fight. If at the end of the battle of the end of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna said, okay, you ready? Yes. Okay, but you don't have to. It's okay. Just go chant Hare Krishna. Then Arjuna would have done that. It wouldn't have mattered at that point. At that point, Arjuna was a completely surrendered soul. So whatever Krishna said, he was fine with that. And we have to come to that point where whatever Krishna does, even if he handles us roughly by his embrace or leaves us brokenhearted by not appearing before us, still he has to be our worshipable Lord unconditionally. That's Lord Chaitanya's position. The supreme position is whatever you do, you leave me, I'm crying, I'm brokenhearted, still I understand that you're my Lord, and whatever you want me to do, I'll do that. If you get pleasure by me going to hell, then take the dust from my feet. If that's what's going to get rid of your headache, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. I just want your pleasure. That's the highest level that we're striving for. And it's a long, difficult road, but as we change our vision, as we become free from the illusion, the covering of Maya Javani Kachchanam, the covering of the curtain of the illusory energy, as it becomes pulled away, we begin to see all the actors for who they are. We can recognize them. We can see how it's going on by Krishna's will, and we can accept what Krishna does because we have the ability to understand. There's a very nice story. I don't know I never remember where I say these things because I say them in so many different places. But anyway, if you've heard it, it's still nice. In 1926, in America, there was a depression. And many people were committing suicide. Even now, you see, in India now, as a result of that big hailstorm they had recently, many farmers are committing suicide because the wheat crop was destroyed just before it was about to be harvested. And so their livelihood, it appeared to them that they couldn't go on. And so in this situation also, the stock market crashed, and money was hardly worth anything, and people were struggling, and so they were very disturbed. And in the midst of that disturbance, one company said they had a job available. And so everybody was very eager because they had to find some means of livelihood. It was very difficult. So this company that was hiring was a company that worked with Morse code, which at that time was the equivalent of cell phones. It was the way that communication could go across the wires over great distances with, electronically, so it was very fast. And it was a series of dots and dashes. And those signs, those long and short sounds, composed words and sent messages. So all these people, hundreds of people that were sitting in this loft, and it was very hot, and up in the front there were 3 booths, and one by one each person had a number. So there were like 500, 600 people. Everyone had a number. One by one they were going up to the booths. And in the back of the loft there was some construction going on. They were fixing. So the atmosphere was extremely tense, and everybody was in a lot of anxiety. And one by one, people were going into the booths and walking out, going in, being interviewed and walking out. And all of a sudden, one man got up and ran to the front of the booth, went in, and 2 seconds or 2 minutes later, the person came out and said, "Okay, you can all go home. We found our man. We're hiring this person." So there was almost a riot. Everybody started to scream, "What's going on here? This person, what's his number? You're calling number 5, number 50, number 60. What's his number? How come he just went ahead of everybody?" Well, what happened is that construction in the back, the man was hammering in Morse code. He was hammering in Morse code. Whoever can understand this message, you go to the front and you tell them that you can understand what I'm saying, that you should go. So this man, he could understand Morse code, and he understood the message was being tapped by the hammer. And he was able to go up there and say, "I understood, it said go up front, so I'm here I am, I could understand." And he immediately got the job because he could perceive the message, whereas everybody else was sitting in the same room hearing the same sound. But they couldn't perceive the message. They couldn't hear it. And because they couldn't hear it, they didn't have the qualification that he had. So even though it appeared that it was fair, it was very fair, but it was their lack of ability to perceive what was going on. They couldn't read the writing in the tapping. And sometimes they say you should read the writing on the wall. You have to be able to read the writing on the wall. He could read the writing in the wall. So because he could read the writing in the wall, he was able to decode the message, and he was able to do what needed to be done, and he got the job. So what's the difference? The difference is in perception. That's the only difference. His ears were the same, the noise was the same, the people were in the same place. Everything was the same. The only difference was his perception. So Prabhupada points out that devotees, that's the difference. They may look like they're doing the same thing. They may be cooking, they may be cleaning, they may be doing so many different things. IT professional, doctor, lawyer, Indian chief, so many things they may be doing. But their perception of what they're doing is different. And their perception of what God is doing is also different. They see God's hand in everything as his well-wishing activity. Even if it appears to be not very favorable at the moment, they understand that there must be some lesson to learn. There must be some good intention, something I'm supposed to get out of this that is supposed to help me make spiritual advancement, something that's supposed to make me more detached from the material world or help me make a quantum leap in my spiritual advancement. And I've had personal experiences of that, and I'm sure if we could spend some time thinking about it in our own personal lives, we would also realize that sometime in our life, something that seemed like a reverse, something that seemed like a calamity, wound up propelling us forward in spiritual life. Queen Kunti recognized that, right? She prayed, Vipadaksantu tashashvat tatra jagatgaro bhavato darshanam yasyat apuna bhavadarshanam. I pray calamities happen again and again. That's not what these women were praying. They weren't thinking, oh, thank you, Krishna, thank you. They were praying, bring our husband back. He's the one, we need him. Come on, he's taking care of us. So, but Kunti had a different vision. Break my attachment, she said. I'm attached and I'm confused because I'm attached to both the Vrishnis, the Kauravas and the Pandavas. I don't want anyone to get killed. And somebody has to, because your will cause that to happen. So break my attachment. Allow me to only be attached to you. Let my mind flow to you like the Ganges flows to your lotus feet. And remove this curtain of illusion and let the calamities happen again and again if they allow me to develop this vision. So as devotees, we should aspire for developing a vision where we are equal in what appears to be suffering materially and what appears to be happiness materially, because happiness will turn to suffering. It's just a matter of time, right? And suffering will turn to happiness. It's just a matter of time. And then it'll turn to suffering again. In the material world, that's the way it is. The material body is there, then it's not there. The material body is healthy, then it's not healthy. There's money, and then it goes. They say money talks, and it often says goodbye. So we sometimes we're up, and sometimes we're down. And the devotee doesn't ride that roller coaster. The devotee has a different perception of life. And this is what Prabhupada is encouraging us to do here, to see that Krishna acts, everything he does is good. Even if it appears materially that it's not good, it's good. It's good. In some ways, for somebody, in some progressive path to spiritual realization, it's a good thing. And Krishna has his freedom to act according to his will, and we have to have faith that whatever that will is, it's good. It's the all-good Supreme Personality of Godhead who has more of a desire. Prabhupada said Krishna wants us to come back to him more than we want to go back to him. Right? Because we're sometimes diverted, aren't we? Sometimes diverted by a desire for material happiness. So we get too into Krishna consciousness, and then something comes along and then says, but this can make you materially happy, make you feel good. This feast at 10 o'clock at night, it can make you feel good, yeah? You can like it. Look at that sweets, and Manoj just baked a fantastic cake, and there's all these wonderful sweets, and there's so many nice things and preparations, and then we take it and we become material happy for a few minutes, and then the next morning we feel like hell, and we don't sleep well, and we don't feel, because we are looking for a little bit of glimmer of happiness there, and then it goes away and becomes suffering. So we want to continue to maintain a steady, non-dualistic march towards the ultimate happiness, because it's only that happiness that is eternal and that will really give us pleasure. Of course, in the material world, we have to do what we have to do, and we need to have some degree of satisfaction, otherwise we can't exist. But don't be under illusion, thinking that happiness will be the ultimate eternal bliss. It won't work. And that's what this young boy is trying to convince these ladies of. And then we'll eventually, in the next few verses, we're going to come back and see who's talking again and what his ultimate motive is. Okay, and I'll end there. Is there any questions we can try to answer? Yes, Prabhu. Do you need a microphone?
I want to ask about our reaction, our equipoised reaction to happiness and distress. If we react equipoised, does that mean that we are reacting without any emotions? And if this is the case, isn't it that we are like impersonalists or Mayavadis? Usually I got the feeling that the devotees, they're more emotional. They're not on this platform.
Excellent question.
Yeah.
Thank you. There's definitely emotions. We see it when Arjuna's son Abhimanyu was killed. He had very strong emotions. He was very disturbed. Unfortunately, he acted on that disturbance, and he made a vow to kill Jayadratha before the sun went down the next day, which was a mistake. Because he was driven in that emotional moment. He was driven to act without considering things carefully. Plus, if those emotions cause us to question our faith in God, then it becomes problematic. So we understand, materially speaking, our mind, we're in a human form of life. We have relationships, and those relationships, very loving relationships, Jaya Nilo Premadhana, that whole song. I bang my head on the rocks and I weep because my spiritual friends are no longer there. The 6 Goswamis. Where is Ramchandra Kaviraj? He was one of Narottam's dear friends, and he was lamenting, where is he now? But the difference is, where is he now? Because when he was with me, we would talk about Krishna together. We would be enlivened in spiritual life together. He would help me in my spiritual pursuit, and I really relished his association. Not that, we went to the movies together and he always told me how beautiful I was, and when I wanted a new dress, he always bought it for me, and like that. So we're emotional, and we definitely have strong feelings of emotion. Certainly, when Prabhupada left, there wasn't a dry eye in Vrindavan, but the emotion is propelled by a spiritual emptiness that this person or this situation was helping me in my spiritual life, and now it's not there anymore. And my relationship was based on spirituality, on the advancement of, on a loving relationship in service to God. Even my children, my wife, my husband, they're supposed to be united with me in service to God, and they're supposed to give me help. If I lament for their absence, but at the same time I have to go on with my spiritual life. And I also have to understand that Krishna took them for a reason. That's another key point, that I don't get angry with God for depriving me of their association that I like, that I want. Because we understand that there's a higher purpose there. Everybody has their progressive path. Everybody has to do what they have to do. And Krishna makes the arrangement according to his will, and I accept his will. So although it hurts me and I have to miss them, I feel this way even about some of my godbrothers who have already left, what to speak of my spiritual master. But, Bhaktitirtha Swami and Sridhar Swami were very dear to me. I miss them almost every day. I miss them. So I still sad that they're gone, but I think they're in a better place. I don't get mad at Krishna for taking them away from me. And my relationship with them, my appreciation for them, was because they gave me so much valuable spiritual association and instruction. So there's an emotional feeling, but it's directed towards our spiritual realization, not towards mutual sense gratification. Actually, there's a very nice story about Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, that there was one man who was always finding fault with him, and very actively and very publicly finding fault with him. And the disciples were always wanting to put him down or do something about, put it on the internet, on Facebook, that guy, what did you do? But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati would never allow it. And then finally the man passed away, and the disciples were very happy. They went because now they didn't have to listen to this anymore. They went to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and said, finally, whatever his name was, passed away. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati started to cry. He was lamenting very strongly. And the devotees were very confused. They said, well, why are you lamenting this person? He was a bane of your existence, a thorn in your side. And he said, no, Krishna sent him to tell me what was wrong with me, because you'll never tell me what is wrong with me, right? The disciples only go, Jai Maharaj, right? Whatever you do is perfect, Maharaj. But he sent he sent this man to tell me where my faults were, where my weaknesses were. And I appreciated that a lot. And now who will tell me? You will never tell me. Now I have no one to tell me. So even in that circumstance, that says it was lamentation. But why the lamentation? The lamentation was because this person was telling me what was wrong with me. We don't usually lament when someone stops telling me what's wrong with me, right? We get happy when someone tells me how great I am, and we think, that guy is really smart. Finally, someone's realized how wonderful I am. And we get really angry when someone says bad things about us, and we call them all kind of names and try to find bad things about them that we can say back. So we have a different vision. Is that helpful? Hare Krishna. Yes.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for a wonderful class.
I don't think that's on.
Hello. Hello.
Oh, there it is.
Hello.
Okay, now I hear it.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for a wonderful class. There's maybe you could speak on some of the thoughts, but there's one example that I really appreciate, things I kind of keep in mind because we all go through difficulties. No one can say they don't. I heard one example that just as a physical trainer puts pressure on the bodybuilder by making him lift a certain amount of heavy weights, in much the same way God puts heavy difficulties in our life in order to develop our spiritual muscles by molding our character. In other words, to remove our duplicity, so we can understand people suffering when we go through the same
There's an
thing.
expression that we tend to pray to God to change our circumstance, and we forget that God put us in our circumstance to change us.
I'm gonna have to write that down. I'll look back the YouTube video. So in regards to this verse, how we can't oblige God, he's independent, he can do whatever he wants, but not in a sense like he's Hitler or anything, of course, he's very loving. But in the Gita...
Interesting comparison. Okay.
Well, most people would think that way, he could do whatever he wants, he's like Hitler, If I read that verse without knowing anything about Krishna consciousness, I would probably think the same thing. So in the Gita, Krishna says, always remember me, but in chapter 18, but in chapter 15 previously, he says, from me comes remembrance. So it's not like we kind of can remember him on our own efforts. It's kind of if he grants us. And this brings to mind, so the example that if we try to increase our rounds, let's say we want to chant 64 rounds, my understanding, that doesn't necessarily means we'll remember Krishna at the time of death. If we're infested with offenses, like that famous verse in Adi Lila 8:16, it says, if one can chant the Hare Krishna mantra for many births and not gain a goal, which is Krishna Prema. And in that purport, Prabhupada mentions that we should strictly follow Lord Chaitanya's verse of being humble like a blade of grass, etc. So my understanding from this is that we should be kind of more concerned about increasing our humility, respect, and tolerance than not necessarily increasing our rounds or our service.
There's two ways to look at that. That's one way to look at it. And certainly we shouldn't just increase our rounds for desire for profit, adoration, distinction. Look at him, he's chanting so many rounds, he must be a sadhu. If the motivation is improper, then of course the benefit will be minimized. But at the same time, Prabhupada also says that organically, uses the word automatically, but this word automatically is used by Prabhupada mostly means naturally or organically. The qualities of humility and all the other things, tolerance, pridelessness, nonviolence, they will automatically come to a person who's sincerely following the path, who's trying to take the path seriously. And the only person that we can look at and see if we're serious is us. We can't look at somebody else and say, oh, you're not serious, or you're not serious, you're not sincere. No, if someone is, that's between them and Krishna. You just look in the mirror. That's as far as you can go. And when you're looking in the mirror, then you'll see what you see. And if you look honestly, you'll make adjustments. And that desire to make adjustments in the mirror, in the person in the mirror, will help us be sincere in our effort, whatever our effort is, whether we're chanting 16 rounds every day or 64 rounds every day. Or what Prabhupada said, I was in Vrindavan, Prabhupada said that in Krishna's eyes, the person who is washing the black and white marble floor is exactly the same as the person who's dressing the black and white marble deities. And Kishore Kishori are white and white, but Radhe Shyam and Vrindavan are black and white. So we don't think that way. The ability to get on the altar and dress the deities is a coveted thing. You have to get second initiation, and in Alachua there's a waiting list to be able to dress Radhe Shyam. You're lucky if you get on there. But no one wants to wash the floor. Try to find the floor. Who wants to volunteer to wash the floor? And everybody says, "Oh, I'm sorry, but I really have to go right now, and my mother's calling me." And so anybody's gone. But Prabhupada said that in Krishna's eyes, both things have the same value. So we have to be really careful because we don't have Krishna's eyes, and so we don't see things properly. For us, we just look in the mirror and we think, am I sincere? Do I really want to make spiritual advancement? Or am I still trying to massage my false ego? Am I still trying, you know where it's at. So that's where you look, that's the adjustment you make, and everything else happens organically. Okay? Any questions over here in this section of the universe? Yes. Here's the mic is over here. That's Nisha.
I notice in myself a tendency to do things out of duty to my spiritual master, like following his instructions out of duty, but it seems to me the same as like if my boss tells me to do something at work and I do it out of duty. And so I'm wondering how to...
Why do you do your duty to your spiritual master? Does he send you a paycheck at the end of the week?
No.
Okay, there's the difference. Because the reason you work, you do what your boss says, because you have a job and you have to get money and you want to live, right? The reason you follow your spiritual master is because you want to make spiritual advancement. That's perfectly fine. And the beginning of our level of spiritual advancement is duty. That's the beginning. The beginning is, I'm doing this to please my spiritual master because I know by following his instruction, I'll make spiritual advancement. And so even though he's not giving him, Prabhupada used to say that all the time. See these boys and girls, they come from affluent families all over, but they've given up everything and they're following me. Oops. And I don't pay them anything. I'm a poor man, I don't have anything. But still they'll work for me. And even once he said of Brahmananda, he said, if I give him the order, someone was challenging him, Prabhupada was answering, he said, if I give him the order, he'll pick you up and throw you out of here. So Brahmananda was big. Is big. So that's why we do it out of duty at the beginning, and then gradually, we get attached to doing certain things. Chanting becomes something I can't imagine my day without chanting my rounds. And, I don't feel I can go forward without at least having the majority of my rounds chanted. It's so much anxiety because I actually develop an attachment for chanting the holy name. But at the beginning, it's duty.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Hare Krishna. Anybody else? Okay, we'll stop. Oh. We have to get our spiritual connections.
The Great Depression of, it was 1929, not 1926.
Okay, 1929.
Sorry.
Thank you very much. There is something before my time, believe it or not. Even though I roamed the earth when the dinosaurs did, I still...
Now this fella that was being critical of Bhakti Siddhanta, I mean, you would think that the devotees would say, oh, he's very offensive to the devotees.
They did.
And that wouldn't be tolerated, I don't think, in our circle.
Yeah, in our circle, there's many different reactions that come. Yeah. Some people do say, well, we have to tolerate. And then there's it's very complicated in this day and age because of the internet, because of the availability of information and the inability of checking the sources of information. That information flies all over the place in your face and you don't know where it came from, right? No. You don't even know that 15 of your friends aren't the same people. You don't know that. Yeah. So it's very complicated, and in most cases, even though it makes you feel angry or anxiety, you can't do anything about it. You can only become better. And so the philosophy becomes, just do that. Let's just focus on becoming better. Otherwise, we just focus on fighting. And if we focus on tit for tat, there's no win. It's lose-lose. Or they're happening in the Ukraine. Then the whole movement unites together and signs petitions and sends support, money, whatever, try to help those devotees, try to deal with the situation so that the devotees aren't mistreated. And a lot of that energy is going now to support the devotees, whereas we didn't even know where Kazakhstan is or the Ukraine was maybe before that happened. But now we realize we have brothers over there, we have sisters over there, we have deities over there. And so it increases our family affection, that outside problem. There's another example of Krishna acting in a way, people say, why is he doing this? But for us, it sometimes provides us with helpful place to, like Banasar, he was breaking the mountains with his 1,000 arms. We get to fight the outside world. If we don't fight the outside world, we fight inside.
Yeah, and then
We're not fighting Maya, we fight with each other.
Then in 1989, they had that BTG, the red cover. Please, Mr. Gorbachev, let our devotees go. You remember that?
Yes, I was in front of the UN with my students singing that song.
Wow, great. Hare Krishna.
Okay, Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.